Hi, welcome to my own personal Macroeconomics 101 course. What is economics? Economics is the study, scientific study, of the choices that individuals, businesses, and government make in coping with scarcity and incentives. Backtrack. What is scarcity and incentives? Scarcity is the reality of the world that there is no free lunch. Everything costs something, and you can't have everything because everyone's limited as to how much money is in their wallet. Some people have $1 billion, some people have $1. But at any point, everyone has a price limit, and therefore, everyone has to choose. I'll give you an example. You have a kid who walks into a candy store. The kid sees a can of soda and a piece of candy, of course. The kid wants both. The soda is 50 cents, the piece of candy he wants is 50 cents. Coincidentally, the kid only has 50 cents on him. He has to choose between the can of soda and the piece of candy. How does the kid make the decision? The kid makes the decision basically by an incentive. That incentive helps him make his choice as follows. Let's say he lives a block away from the store. And in his house he happens to have a refrigerator which happens to have a can of soda. Very reasonable hypothetical situation. And therefore, the kid's going to say, I can easily just buy the piece of candy, walk home, and by the time I'm done with the candy, I'll drink the soda. Therefore, he has more of an incentive in this situation to get the piece of candy over the can of soda. You could also flip the situation around, say that the kid's very thirsty, he's not so hungry. In such a situation, he'll have more of an incentive to get the soda than the candy. But the point being is that nothing comes for free. There is no free lunch. Everything costs something. We'll get into cost opportunity later. Cost opportunity is basically the price you have to pay for something else. Now let's delve a little bit deeper into economics. In economics, you have two questions that have to be answered. One question is, who is benefiting from our economic policies? Let's put that on the side. The second question is a little bit more deeper. It also is broken up. You have the question of what. What is the question of what are we producing? And on top of that, how much are we going to produce of it? It's basically decided by supply and demand. 100 years ago, the world was very different. America was very different. Most people, 25% of our economy, were farmers, and they produced agriculture. Corn, bread, wheat, well, you get the idea. Anyway, 100 years later, fast forward, things are very different. Most of our economy is not farmers. In fact, a very small percentage of Americans now are farmers. And what we're producing is also very different. 100 years ago, we produced much more in goods than we did in services. Now, we produce much more in services than we do in goods. This cell phone is a good. It's something I hold in my hand. It's physical. That means it's a good. It was produced in some factory by Nokia. The AT&T that allows me to make phone calls is a service. The insurance that you use, Geico, for your car insurance, your home insurance, those are all services. The guy who fixes your cable box, an insurance, the plumber, what he does is also a service. Sorry. Everything I just said is a service. A good is something physical. You hold it. They made it. It also has a use, but the point being it's physical. A service is usually not something necessarily physical, but it's something that's being provided for you. In our economy today, if I didn't say it before, 80% of our economy is services. Let's get to the next one. For whom? You're making products, you're providing services, but who's getting them? Well, it all depends on how much money's in that wallet of yours. The question of for whom is who's getting what. And I'll give you an example. I happen to love a Corvette, but I can't afford one. It's a $65,000 car usually. And therefore, I'm stuck with my 1999 Nissan Sentra. Why? Because that's all I can afford. The question of for whom was answered. I can't get the Corvette, I can't afford it. I can't afford a 1999 Nissan Sentra, which causes me headaches every month. Then you have the question of how. How do you produce the stuff? And how breaks down into factors of production. The factors of production are land. Land is the resources we have to produce things. It happens to be limited. There are only so many rainforests in South America that we can cut down for whatever we're making or putting there. Eventually it's going to run out. Then there is labor. You have a job at ShopRite, at McDonald's, you work in a factory making bottles. All that's labor. Then you have capital. Capital are the machines and everything else that's in the factory, the company, that they're using to produce something. And capital is also limited by how much the company is willing to invest and how much it has to invest in producing stuff. Then you have entrepreneurship. We're going to abbreviate it. In the economy, there are firms, there are companies, and those firms and companies have CEOs. The CEOs have to make decisions. The decisions they're making are hopefully going to benefit their company. But that's entrepreneurship. The decisions you're making with your capital, with your labor, and the land, the resources you have, to better the company. The next question, who's benefiting from the economy? Well, a man by the name of Adam Smith in 1776 wrote a book called The Wealth of Nations. The Wealth of Nations could be summed up as one thing. He was probably a conservative. Keep the government out of our business. In other words, if you have everyone just trying to benefit themselves, do what's in their own self-best interest, the result is going to be is that the economy as a whole, society as a whole, will benefit. On the opposite end of that string is communism. Communism says that the government control everything, from every bank, every company. They'll decide how much you make. History has shown that communism hasn't worked. There's also the in-between, which I consider the in-between, which is socialism. Now granted, America does have drops of socialism within its capitalist, free market economy, but history has proven that capitalism, Adam Smith, 200 years later, still remains correct. That if you just let everyone try and do what's in their own best interest, in general, everyone benefits from that.